Have you ever wondered if eating more and lifting heavier could actually help you shed inches and transform your body? In today's episode, I sit down with Joe Hoye, the anti-diet and anti-scale guy, to unpack why the old school approach to dieting and fitness might be what's holding you back. You'll learn how chronic dieting impacts your metabolism, how to rebuild your relationship with food, and why focusing on strength over the scale is going to lead to lasting results. By the end of this episode, you're going to walk away with practical strategies to fuel your body appropriately, gain confidence, and create sustainable habits that are going to help you shed inches without restrictive diets. If that sounds like something you want to learn, then stick around. You're going to love this conversation. Before we dive in though, if you're listening on the Apple Podcasts app or on Spotify, make sure you hit that follow button. And if you're watching on YouTube, then be sure to hit like and subscribe down below. Also, schedule a free 30-minute health consultation with me by going to nickcarrier.com and selecting a time that works best for you. I'm going to help you get a clear plan to achieve your goals of losing body fat and or getting stronger. So book your call today by going to nickcarrier.com. All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Best You podcast. Today, I am really excited to be joined by Joe Hoye. We're going to have a great conversation today. We're going to talk, obviously, a lot about fitness, a lot about nutrition, specifically, probably mainly from the female side of things. Not that there's some nuanced differences, but I'm really excited to talk today, maybe initially about women as you kind of start to approach perimenopause and menopause, but also women who are listening in your mid-late 20s, early mid-30s to ensure that you can set yourself up for success so that when you get to those particular ages, you don't have to work in recovery. You already worked proactively to stave off some of the negative downstream side effects that come with aging, if you will. So let's go ahead and dive right in. When women start to get to that like perimenopause age, maybe closer to 40, what are some of the changes that they begin to experience and they begin to feel so that they kind of like know, okay, my body is changing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing we're going to think about is like when we think about menopause, when we hear the word menopause or perimenopause, we think about hormonal shifts and changes and the side effects that are going to come with that, like poor sleep, night sweats, mood swings, and just the whole slew of, the over 69 menopausal symptoms that most people don't know about. But the thing that I really focus on, that I think most people really don't pay enough attention to or give enough value to, is basically the reverse compounding interest that women are fighting against, right? And so the analogy I like to use is everybody thinks about retirement for wealth, right? They're contributing to their 401k. Naturally, they contribute 5% of their paycheck, and year after year that compounds and helps them. But guess what? After the age of 30, for men and women, but more specifically women, they have this compounding interest that is fighting back against them in the form of muscle loss. And so for the first few years, maybe the first decade, that muscle loss doesn't really matter to them, right? They can't tell. It happens very, very slowly, and it's not affecting them much. But 10 years in, 15 years in, 20 years in, after you're losing 1% of your muscle mass year after year, you have drastically lowered your metabolic rate, which is the exact thing that gives you the ability to eat normal amounts of food without gaining weight. And so now we're faced with these 40, 50, 60-year-old women that come to me and say, Joe, I haven't changed anything, right? I didn't change my job. I didn't change how I eat. I didn't change how I work out. Still the same husband, still the same kids. Nothing's changed. But my body has. I continue to gain weight, or I can't lose weight, and it's all around my midsection. And it's due to this reverse compounding interest that in the beginning didn't do much, but now is digging a deeper and deeper hole by the month and by the year that it's hard to get out of.
Yeah. I'm glad that you say that, because a lot of people think like, man, when you hit 40, that's when things really change. It's like, no, that's when you actually just start to actually see the changes or be able, like it's been actually changing for the last 20 years. You just are now getting to the point where it's extreme enough to where you're experiencing enough, negative emotion or negative side effects where you're ready to do something about it.
you can no longer ignore it at that point, right? For the first 10 years, like, sure, you lost a very small amount, but those small amounts add up. And just like you said, Nick, now you're faced with it.
Yeah.
And it's very blatant.
Now, when it comes to, you talked about how when people are getting to this perimenopause state and menopause, there's hormonal shifts and there's a lot of maybe symptoms or side effects that come along with that. Do those have any correlation to the decrease in muscle mass? Or are those regardless, those are going to happen no matter what? Or maybe they're worse if you have decreased muscle mass, or maybe they're just completely irrelated?
They're going to happen either way, right? Like perimenopause and menopause is something that is 100% unavoidable for anyone that's a female. You're going to hit it. What I see as the thing that exacerbates these hormonal shifts in a very negative way is not so much the muscle loss, but the chronic dieting that has come as a side effect of losing muscle and not knowing what to do about it, right? And so we're losing muscle. Well, women are losing muscle and they start to realize this. So then they start to go on a diet and they cut to these really low calorie diets. And to no surprise by me and probably you, they don't work long term. And so then they find the next diet. And the next diet is very similar. While they're maybe eating in a different style, they're still eating 800, 900, 1100 calories a day. And that is a massive amount of stress. And that stress directly correlates to the hormonal shifts. And like I said before, exacerbates them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think chronic dieting has a lot of negative consequences that so many people don't realize. They are starting to add on some body fat and then they think they need to diet and then they might do some sort of dieting and over a particular amount of time they might lose some weight, but a larger percentage of that weight comes from muscle loss than is actually ideal, and then they lose muscle and then that decreases their metabolic rate and then they go into some maybe unhealthy habits and add some body fat and then they need to go into a diet again. And so it's like people are chronically in this state of maybe adding a little bit of body fat, then maybe losing a little bit of body fat, but also losing muscle, but then putting body fat back on and not gaining any muscle. And therefore it's like they're continually setting themselves up in a worse situation than where they previously were.
I really hope that the people listening follow that, because that's it, right? Yo-yo dieting is not as simple as losing weight and then gaining it back, because weight comes in different shapes and sizes and forms, right? And so, like you just said, as we lose weight on the trend diet that we're currently on, we're losing some body fat, but we're also losing muscle. Then you fall off, you gain it all back. Guess what? You didn't gain the same ratio of fat to muscle. You probably didn't gain any muscle and you gained all fat. So if you were 200 pounds in the beginning, then you went down to 150, but you lost 15 pounds of fat and the rest of it was muscle. And then you go back up to 200. Guess what? You didn't just gain 15 pounds of fat and the rest of it muscle. You gained 50 pounds of fat and now you have less muscle, lower metabolism, and you look and feel worse than you did before. And like, that's why this whole thing is dangerous.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so I think one of the biggest things is changing cultural and societal norms around the view of food and the view of strength training and everything like that. I kind of want to dive into this. I thought that we were going to get it later into the conversation, but I want to go ahead and dive in because I think we're there. Conditioning around the relationship of food. So oftentimes there's women who grow up, and this is women and men. It's probably just maybe more prevalent in women, if you will, but grow up and think like you shouldn't eat too much, or some people are like, you need to finish your plate, or it's like these foods are bad or these foods are good, or like if they played a sport, they're punished because they're overweight or whatnot. How have you found with working with so many women how to break out of previous conditioning with their relationship with food?
Man, hey, anybody that's listening, just know that Nick is an incredible coach. You can tell when somebody truly gets it, and this just comes natural to you. So I hope that your listeners are very, very clear on that. And I couldn't agree with you more that men and women are conditioned to food and what to do about it I think you're also right that women are conditioned to eating small amounts of food. Men have their problems for sure. It's a different conversation for a different day. But what I found working with women 40, 50, 60 plus for nearly 7 years now is, gosh, I don't think there's a demographic that struggles with this worse than them. Because when they were growing up, when they were our age and when they were younger, when they were teens, they were told by their mom, their dad, their brother, a peer, an older peer, an idol, that, hey, you're a woman. Like, you're not supposed to eat a lot of food. You're not supposed to take up a lot of space. You're supposed to be very small and thin. And that is what they learned foundationally is true for nutrition. And you and I, and hopefully everybody now, knows that that couldn't be further from the truth, right? Women specifically are the ones that are being tormented by muscle loss year after year. They're the ones that should actually be focusing on muscle gain and muscle retention year after year more than men, right? And so that's one of the biggest challenges that we face is showing them, hey, you got to eat more food. You got to lift some heavy weights. And guess what? When you eat more food, you don't need to feel guilty of it. You can have the brownie and you can still be successful because your body actually needs those calories. Of course, I still want you to eat high protein, but that doesn't mean you can't have some less than ideal food from time to time. And that's one of the biggest things because, like we kind of just hit on, they've been trained that if they have the brownie, they're bad. If they have the brownie, they'll gain weight. Something negative will happen. When in reality, having the brownie and not feeling guilty oftentimes is the unlock to living a life that's fulfilling, pleasurable, and keeping you healthy.
Yeah, no doubt. No, you talked about how the two main things to break the conditioning or to educate women on is eating more food and lifting heavier weights. Let's try to get into some kind of like more specifics, more practical stuff there. When it comes to more food, what does more food look like? Because I think so many of us, and females in particular, have such a misconception as to what is an appropriate amount of food to be eating. You mentioned how sometimes a lot of people, if they're going on diet or after diet, sometimes depending on their size, they're eating 1,300, 1,200, 11, 1,000, 900 calories. And it's like for 99% of people, obviously, depending on your size, like that is not going to be enough. So like what is maybe an appropriate amount of calories that, again, obviously it's very particular about body size, activity levels, stuff like that, but try to give us some sort of framework around quantity of food, maybe from a calories perspective, and then maybe like protein and your thoughts on kind of that quantity side of things.
Absolutely. Before I get into that, I want to share two very clear reasons as to why 1,200 calorie diets aren't for you. Reason number one, I used to have a 42-pound border collie, little puppy, ball of energy. And again, she was 42 pounds. And being the nutrition nerd that I am, as she was growing up, I was like, I want to give this girl all the nutrients and energy that she needs so that she can grow into the best, healthiest dog possible. And fully grown, she was 42 pounds. I researched this. That dog needed to eat 1,200 calories a day to maintain. Okay. Reason number two, I have a nephew. When he was 3, this is a guess of age, he was 32 inches tall. And again, being the nutrition nerd I am, I was like, I wonder how many calories this little guy needs. He needed 1,100 calories a day. Guess what? Nobody here listening is 32 inches tall. Nobody here is 42 pounds. If you're not checking either of those two boxes, you should not be eating that little amount of food. Okay. It's a good question though. And it's funny that you asked now because I just researched this the other day as a refresher. On average, the American woman needs to be eating 1,900 to 2,400 calories a day to maintain their body weight in a healthy way. A really easy litmus test for everyone to know, should you eat more? Because you're right, Nick, that was a very broad statement. Should you eat more is to download a free tracking app, Lose It, MyFitnessPal, Mike's Macros, you name it, and just track everything you put in your mouth for the next 2 to 3 days. Find the average of that, and then go online to another free TDEE calculator. You probably have one. I have one. We all have one. And figure out what your TDEE is. That's your total daily energy expenditure. It's how many calories you burn throughout your day. If your daily calorie intake that you just tracked for 3 days is less than the number you got from the calorie calculator, you fit that box and you need to eat more food.
100%. 100%. I think that's one of the things that would be super eye-opening and revealing to so many people. Some men, definitely a lot of women, is if they go on there and they see what their TDEE should be. Let's say it's 2,000 calories for ease of numbers, and they track and they realize they're eating 1,400 calories, which means they like conceptually and philosophically should be in a caloric deficit, but their weight is staying the same. That's like, no, your metabolism is only burning 1,400 calories rather than the 2,000 that it should be. And that's often because probably you have very little muscle mass and you're not eating very much, and maybe you've chronically dieted. So it's important to do that exercise because it can be very eye-opening and revealing to a lot of people, like, wow, I am burning way less calories than I typically should be at this height, weight, activity level.
You nailed it. And that's a scary thing to think of at first, of like, hey, I've been taught that I need to eat these 1,400 calories, but Nick and Joe are saying I need 2,000, and the calculator saying I need 2,000. And yeah, that's terrifying because you probably think you're going to gain weight until you eat that 2,000 and you're like, holy shit. Like, I had a donut and a piece of pizza and I still hit my protein goal and I enjoyed life. And now my cravings are actually gone because I listened to them and I just stepped on the scale and I'm not any heavier than I was and I feel way better. And then that scary feeling is actually a really freeing feeling.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's like a lot of people, for example, if they've been so conditioned to only eat, like, let's say 1,400 calories, because that's the number we were just using, if they learn that they need to be maybe eating 2,000, it's not like you have to go to eating 2,000 calories every single day from here on out, right? It's like ramp it up slowly. Go to 1,450 for a week, go to 1,500 for a week, and then slowly but surely add things up, because that will ensure that like your digestive system adapts. That'll ensure that you aren't putting on unnecessary body fat by just ramping up calories crazy in a short period of time. So, and then like you're not just overly full as well.
Yep. Yeah, you're a great teacher, because we're missing a lot of applicable things, right? People should not be jumping from 1,400 to 2,000. That's actually a surefire way to gain weight. But if you do it slowly and teach your metabolism and your body that it's safe and that it's actually getting the food that it needs in a slow, consistent way, that's how you mitigate the weight loss and still reap all the benefits.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. It's very insightful that you said the average woman might need 1,900 to 2,400 calories per day. I would definitely, without looking at the study or that number or anything, I would have to tend to agree that that's probably pretty accurate. We said more food. We said heavier weights. I think a lot of women will look at 10-pound weights and pick up 10-pound weights because that's what they've always picked up, and like they feel a little bit of a burn at some point after doing 10, 12, 15, 20 reps of something, and they think because I feel a little bit of a burn, that's heavy enough. I know it's a very broad question. As a fitness coach, this is a very broad question, but I'm going to let you run with it however you'd like to. How heavy of weights should we be using, and maybe like how regularly?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there's one really clear way to answer this. And it actually just came up in a challenge I ran. We were doing exactly what you and I are talking about, teaching these women to lift usually 2 to 4 times a week, lift heavy, and then eat more food. And on average, people lost 6 to 8 pounds in those 4 weeks by eating more. But one question that came up is, Joe, on our live call, you told me to eat more food. I mean, not eat more food, sorry, to lift heavier weights. What is heavy? And I think that heavy is simply a subjective term, right? Nick, heavy to you might be like 405 back squat. Heavy to me might be a 365 back squat. Heavy to Karen might be a back squat with the barbell. I think heavy is less related to a number of pounds and more related to RPE. And so anybody that doesn't know what RPE is, that's rate of perceived exertion. How hard you feel like you are working. That generally goes on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I feel like there's no gravity on this planet, 10 being I don't think I could lift anymore or I'm going to seriously injure myself. I think that people should be training probably around a 7 to 9 RPE on average, meaning, right, the way that we would judge this is if we're, again, doing back squats and we're aiming for 10 reps and we're aiming for a 8 RPE, that means when you get to 10 reps, you probably could have done 12 total, but you also may have injured yourself or been very close to it. You have 2 reps left until absolute failure. And so once we find the weight that can check those boxes, now you're lifting heavy.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. That's 100% my philosophy as well. And I think that one of the important things to also note about this is the more you train and the more you actually push yourself, the better idea you actually have of what is an 8 for me, what is a 9 for me, like what is that, the reps in reserve, what is that failure point for me? Because again, a lot of people, if they've only been doing a certain number of weight for so long, they might think it's actually hard until they actually are coached by somebody and shown what hard actually looks and feels like.
That's a great point too. So we only do online coaching. I have the blessing that I have a few local clients, and one of them was talking about weightlifting and exactly what you said. She's like, Joe, I think I'm really pushing myself, but I'm not really seeing results. I was like, hey, you live close, right, Tracy? She's like, yeah. I was like, great. I'll see you at Planet Fitness Saturday morning. And so I worked out with her and I showed her just what she was capable of. And her RPE, her believed RPE before coming to me was that she was at an 8 to 9. When she left, she was like, oh my God, Joe, now I'm at an 8 to 9. And by the way, thank you, because I'm so much stronger than I thought I was, which means I'm so much more capable in my day-to-day life. And it also means I'm going to get so many more results because of this. And so it just takes pushing yourself a little bit and challenging your beliefs and seeing what you're capable of. Because I think so many people that aren't used to this are capable of so much more than they think.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So many people are holding themselves back. The amount of times that I'm coaching somebody in person and standing next to them and they're getting ready to either put the weight down or rack the weight or anything like that, I'm like, no, one more. And they almost can do like 2, 3, 4 more reps, oftentimes more than they would have because they just felt a little bit of a burn and would have stopped. This has been awesome. I want to dive into a little bit of hormones because I know this is obviously a hot topic. When hormonal shifts begin to change, kind of a two-pronged question. What are the hormones that are shifting that really impact our metabolism, and how do they impact our metabolism in an energy expenditure and a TDEE standpoint? Like, do they slow down how many calories we're able to burn when our hormones are out of balance? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know what? That's actually not my jam. I know that as the guy that works with 40, 50, 60-year-old women, it's expected of like, all right, this guy's got to be the hormone pro. What I've found is that 90% of the time, a lot of the people that are pointing the finger at hormones be like, hey, I can't lose weight because my hormones are just jacked up. They're not doing the basics. And so am I able to help? Yes. And I'll tell you how in a second. But before I ever do that, I say, you know what? You could absolutely be right, Trisha. But until you've done the foundational things that create results for humans across the globe, we can't point the finger at any advanced protocols, right? And so let's dial in your nutrition, your exercise, your lifestyle, and your recovery. By the way, all of that is very simple. You do most of it on a day-to-day basis. We just need to do it differently, not more. And then let's see what happens. Like I said, 9 times out of 10 or 90% of the time, they can lose weight. For the cases that can't, because I want to be fair and say that, you know what, you could be right. You could be that 10% or that 1 out of 10 that can't due to your hormones. Number one, like that's why I hired a registered dietitian as my head coach, because she's smart in ways that I'm not. And also we have hormone clinics that we'll refer to and be like, hey, she's done everything right. Let's get some blood panels, send it back to us. We'll read it and then we'll go from there. But I don't want to be the one to speak on this because I'm not personally insanely educated about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm the same way. I'm right there with you. And honestly, same exact experience. It's like, you can't point the finger at hormones if you're sleeping 5.5 hours a night. You can't point your finger at hormones if you're drinking a couple glasses of wine every single night. It's like, and I'm not criticizing anybody who is getting that much sleep or drinking that much wine. It is what it is. But like, you have to get those foundational things right before you jump to other things, because you have to get the baseline and the foundation laid in order for maybe so those other things to actually work and come into effect and provide you with the results. One of the last things I kind of want to cover is, and I want to make sure this is not coming from the standpoint of like, you know, we've talked so much about how one of the biggest problems that women experience is undereating. And so I'm not saying that people anyways, we'll dive in. So I think that one of the smallest reasons why we eat sometimes is hunger. Like, I think maybe 25%, I'm just making up a percentage, but maybe 25% of the time we eat is because we're actually hungry. The other 75 might be like we're bored, we're stressed, we need comfort food, we have a craving, something just maybe tastes really good, or we were given a huge portion size at the restaurant. We felt like we needed to eat it all, right? Like there's so many other reasons outside of hunger that we're actually eating and potentially overeating sometimes. So how can we better navigate when we decide to eat versus when we shouldn't be eating, if you will?
Man, it all of that boils down to one thing, and it's simply slowing down, right? And I say this not to sound like I'm better than anyone, because trust me, I don't slow down. And I am not great at listening to my body and the cues that it gives me sometimes. But even with that being true, I know that we all need to slow down. We need to stop playing on our phone and being mindless all the time. We need to sit with ourselves and listen to what our body is saying. We need to find better ways to cope or handle stress or negative emotions. We should find better ways to handle and congratulate ourselves through positive emotions. Am I saying that we should never eat tasty food for those reasons? No, it's okay to do that sometimes, not all the time, right? And I think that a lot of this would simply be fixed and stop if we would slow down and meditate and journal and think about our thoughts, or listen to the way our body feels, what our stomach is saying, to ask ourselves internal questions, right? I go to the fridge, I open the fridge. Am I hungry, or do I just have a craving? When's the last time I ate? How much have I eaten today? Simply slowing down for 15 seconds will solve a whole lot of this.
No, I love that. I love that you said it all boils down to one thing, and I really do think it does. It's like slow down. And that obviously goes for other areas of life as well. But I think slowing down can, and actually having conversations with yourself, like you said, like asking yourself, why did I just open the fridge? Because oftentimes I know I'll go into the fridge and be like, what am I doing? I'm not even hungry. I just was distracted or whatnot. So I think that was really, really great. The way I want to kind of finish today is, to an extent, like a recap, I feel like, of what we've talked about today. But if somebody's listening right now and they maybe are somebody who has been a chronic dieter and they're hearing today, eat more food, lift heavier weights, but they're nervous about doing that because they don't want to put on excess body fat and they don't want to get bulky or something like that, how would you communicate to that person to calm down their fear, if you will, and to show them that those things wouldn't actually happen?
Yeah, that's so hard, right? Without having the proof for yourself, it's a really hard thing. And so the first thing I would say is trust the process, right? There's no way in hell that I would be able to do this for 7 years if every time I told somebody to do what we just talked about for the last 30 minutes, they gained weight. You guys wouldn't be listening to me right now, right? And so clearly something works. Because of that, for that exact reason, I wrote a book that's completely free to teach you guys how to do it and show you guys some case studies and explain to you why it works, right? And so it's called Diet Detox. You can probably, I've actually never Googled it, but I think you can probably Google it. I know you can obviously find it on my site. And when is this going to come out, Nick?
This is going to come out in either 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, great. So we're actually running a New Year's challenge. It's on January 12th. And I know when people hear New Year's challenge, they think of everything we just talked about: eating less, exercising way more, and doing crap you can't sustain. It couldn't be further from the opposite. Every single person in there knows what they're getting into. They're going to eat more food. They're going to learn how to do it directly with me. And I've actually teamed up with an over 40 strength coach to teach women how to strength train for their body and their goals. So that's January 12th. You guys can go to that. It's challenge.hoyfit.com. And so if you're somebody that learns with a community, that learns through video and talking rather than reading a book, that's probably your best bet.
Awesome. I love it. I love it, man. Well, this has been so great today. So many different things that I hope people remember and remind themselves of over and over again, especially people who are oftentimes going on diets and eating less and in that negative cycle that we talked about so often. But this has been great. So you guys make sure, like he just said, go check out that challenge. It starts January 12th. Go to challenge.hoyfit.com. You can also just go to hoyfit.com, and then you can follow Joe on Instagram at joe.dietdetox as well. Any other good place people should go?
That's perfect. Facebook, Instagram is where I spend most of my time.
Sweet. Awesome, man. Well, this has been super valuable. I hope a lot of people hear these messages and really let them sink in and help change their conditioning and beliefs a little bit, because conditioning and beliefs will then change actions, which will then change results and provide people with more confidence and feel a feeling of empowerment and stuff like that. So this has been great today. If you guys are not following the show yet on the Apple Podcasts app or on Spotify, make sure you hit that follow button. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below. Go follow Joe on Instagram at joe.dietdetox, and then check out that challenge.hoyfit.com. But Joe, that's all we got today, man. Awesome stuff.
Nick, thank you.
What a powerful conversation with Joe. That episode was packed with practical advice to help shift your mindset, hopefully, so you can fuel your body the right way and finally shed inches without restrictive diets. Joe's perspective on prioritizing strength over the scale and repairing your relationship with food is truly transformative. If you loved this episode, make sure you follow the show on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss any of the future episodes that are going to help you look and feel like your best you. Also, don't forget to book your free health consultation with me by going to nickcarrier.com. I'm going to help you lay out a clear plan so that you can inevitably and undoubtedly achieve your goals. So go to nickcarrier.com to book your time today. Here are my 3 biggest takeaways from today's episode. Number 1 is chronic dieting slows down your metabolism. Eating enough and fueling your body properly is the key to long-term success. Number 2, strength training and lifting heavy weights are really essential for shedding meaningful inches, because that'll allow you to maintain the muscle or maybe even build muscle while you're losing body fat, and will ensure that the weight that you're losing isn't coming from muscle, but it's coming from the unwanted body fat. And the third and finally is your relationship with food can be changed by stopping mindless eating and reframing habits that you learned during your childhood. If you can do these things, then you'll continue to get closer to the healthiest version of yourself and ultimately continue to get closer and closer to your best you.